Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're looking at starting a podcast, look at the pain point of where you're at the moment or where you're helping your clients at. And then that, I think, will generate some ideas of where you want to go with topics and guests that you want to interview. Hi, I'm Kyla Neal, a business coach and mentor from Australia, and I'm a mum of 2.
And I'm Emilia Ohrtmann, a multi-passionate entrepreneur and a mum of 4. I am from Germany, but I live in Dubai.
In our raw and authentic episodes, we share with you business and personal tips we have learned along the way while starting and growing our global businesses, as well as bringing you inspiring interviews with other mumpreneurs.
This is a podcast from mums for mums.
Welcome to our Mums in Biz podcast.
So welcome back to the Mums in Biz podcast, everyone. We're so happy to have you here, and I am back with Kyla, a long episode with Kyla today, because we want to talk about a topic that I feel is a bit overdue. Kyla and I have been asked so many questions. I was going to say multiple times, like many times, about podcasting. Since I think when we started it's 2 years ago now, we thought we're not that new. So many people are doing podcasts, but I think back then it was still a bit new, kind of new. And since then, podcasting has really exploded, and podcasting is the word or the term used for anything, on Instagram, on YouTube, with video, without video. It's like everywhere, and everybody is doing a podcast, and everybody wants to do a podcast. Or if they don't want to, people say to them, you should do a podcast.
Yes.
So we are getting so many questions. And I just had a meeting a few weeks ago with somebody who asked me, can I have a meeting with you and ask you lots of questions about podcasts? And, and I was like, okay, yes, sure. But I can't do that with everybody. So this podcast is for everybody who wants to start a podcast. It's the meeting for everybody that you can listen to. And we share our insights, how we do it, what we should have done right from the start, and all those kind of things. So how do you start a podcast? What tools do you need? What you don't need, maybe our own experiences.
Yeah.
But before we start, we want to thank you all for listening. Of course, like every week, we are thanking you. We are super grateful, and it's all the time so nice to hear from you. I want to mention one of our core fans, I would call her, in specifically. Her name is Florence, and she's coaching with the Flow on Instagram. Follow her. It's nice coaching tips. She has known Kyla for a very long time, and then I got to know her through the Mums in Biz community as well. And she always says she listens to every podcast. She told me, I listen to all your podcasts. I love hearing your voices, and it's so nice. So thank you very much. And I just want to read out a post that she did under one of my Instagram posts the other day. It was actually about my book, but she mentions the podcast. So thank you, Emilia, for sharing your experiences in a very organic and natural way. That's about my book. I felt emotionally connected as your life resonates with mine. And I also love to share some extracts of It's Your Life with my teenagers, as they also go through these challenging situations, and awareness coming from another mother is obviously more welcomed. I enjoyed listening to episode 51 from the Mums in Biz podcast. As you're reading the introduction of It's Your Life, you passed on the tone and the pace of your book. From there, while I was reading your book, I had the feeling I was having a coffee in a cozy place with a friend who was sharing amazing and valuable experiences. I definitely recommend all mums to read It's Your Life, and please share it with your teenagers. You'll make them a favor. Congratulations, Emilia and Kyla, and happy celebration. I thought that was so nice. And she kept on saying how she loves the podcast and so on. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you, Florence.
That's so nice. That was under your post from today, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, that was like a post from last week. Yeah,
that you posted that about your book. Yeah,
about the book, and then she wrote that underneath. And she had told me previously as well that she listened to the recording of the intro. I didn't even remember it was number 51.
No, I did not have to struggle to think about what it was just said. I was like, what episode was 51?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
it's where I read the introduction of my book, and she liked that. And actually some other people also said they really enjoyed that, and then sort of heard my voice while reading the book, which I thought was actually really nice.
Yeah.
That's
so nice.
So let's begin.
Right? So I think podcast kicked
podcasting.
Off. Didn't they? I think they exploded onto the scene in 2020, I think more than ever, obviously with everyone being locked down for most of the year last year. I think that the communication or way that we communicated with everyone in the outside world, I love how we call that, like supernatural, became podcasting and people on Instagram, I think. But I think podcasting did really take off because I saw people come out the woodwork that I never thought would do a podcast, and the frequency of when people were releasing podcasts increased as well. I listened to one called Mind, Body, Soul, and that went to once a week again, even with a dabble in between of like a midweek motivation. I mean, they're a big company. So, but yeah, I think everyone sort of jumped on that bandwagon. It was a way to reach people's audience. I think people wanted an outlet. And I think that there was a whole lot of difference, but a lot of wellness podcasts, I think, came onto the scene as well, talking about sort of mental health and keeping fit and eating and different things to do while in quarantine. So, but yeah, I can't believe it's been 2 years and we're at episode, I don't even know what, we're in our 60s episode by the time this comes out. But it's crazy. But I think it's a good outlet. I think for us even, I was thinking about this the other day, I think it's actually a bit of a therapeutic outlet as well, as far as like just having a bit of a chat and a talk, rather than the actual, putting it on and doing it because, we've got a podcast out there. It's a bit of an outlet of chatter. So, okay. So
when we started, it was more like, let's just do this. We like podcasts, let's just like, our idea was good, was unique. We had this international aspect of a German and Australian in Dubai, it was all like, we were moms. So we had this little gap. If you're listening, learn from this as well. We had a gap there.
Yes, a gap from the audience.
But exactly. But the thing is, it was back then suddenly, and we did it just because we liked it, and we had no.
And also, I was moving, right? I was moving back to Australia, and
true, yeah.
And the Mums in Biz community was like in-person community events. And how could we keep engaging with the community and within the Facebook group and continue, talking about and helping people, with business topics and life topics, really.
Yeah, exactly. But what I wanted to say, and I don't know how that was for you, but for me, it was one of the best marketing tools suddenly. And I keep saying that to everybody. Suddenly, even though our reach back then was not big, our audience was not big, but still, that's when people actually started like talking to me and even in the cafes, like people saw me and said, "Oh, you're from the podcast." So that is actually when, I had been doing all this marketing like intentionally. And then when I started the podcast with you, and it was suddenly the best marketing tool.
And Dubai is like that as well. Australia is not like that. I mean, very rarely would you be going out and getting recognized unless
it's too big. No?
It's too big, right? But Dubai, I think people forget that there's only 1.5 million people who live in that city. So when you're going to the cafes, you are seeing the same people over and over again, and they do recognize you. And but I think it's great. It's to start out, in that regard, and then. Yeah, and then other people get to know you, and then they interlink you with people on Instagram or whatever the social media outlets everyone's on, and it grows from there.
And I mean, back then we had an advantage. There was no other. I think there were 2 other podcasts here, other podcasts that we knew from, and one was completely different, and the other one was different again. So, there was no like competition per se, although we didn't even look at that.
We didn't,
but we didn't even know where to learn from. So I learned a lot from, one of the ladies that lived here where I live, and she had one of the other podcasts, and it was a completely different podcast. So she also showed me a lot.
Yeah.
Which is how we started. We also learned from somebody else.
Are they still doing their podcast?
Again.
Are they still doing their podcast?
And I was just thinking then, I don't know, because she moved away and I'm not sure. They were planning on doing it like we are. And I am not sure actually if they're still doing it. Okay, I need to check it out.
Yeah, I need to check it out. No, but I remember calling you and saying, how do you feel about doing a podcast? With seriously guys, with zero intention of me actually going out there and looking what we had to do, because I can't do that. But I knew the OCD German would go out there who would go and do it. So I was quite okay. No, but it was I think because we got it was the swing of the events, and I think with everything that was going on, transitioning back home, personal life and everything, I was like, okay, so what? We just pack up and we just forget about these people who have been coming to the events, even if it was, 35 of them or 40 of them or 20 of them at a time. I don't know. It just didn't feel right just to drop it at that stage. So, it was just by chance. I thought, podcast, it can't be that hard, and then sort of transitioning
and it's not.
Stuff.
And I just want to say, it's not. So if you're thinking about let's start. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, the first thing that you should do is actually picking your topic, I would say. Pick your topic. And then you don't even, and I keep saying that to all my clients and so on, you don't even need to pick a name right away, I feel. Sometimes the name comes naturally. To us, it was there. But I think you pick a topic, you start all the things, and then a name will come to you, or then you have a glass of wine with your friends and you just brainstorm a name. I mean, at some point you do need to pick a name, because obviously
you need to register.
You pick your topic, you pick your categories. I think you decide what kind of way you want to do it, whether you are talking yourself all the time or whether you're interviewing. Who are you interviewing? Are there only women like us? We are alienating men, or men and women. What age groups? Who's your target audience? I mean, it's like starting a business in a way, right? All these kind of things you need to be clear at, because then it's a lot easier to do your episodes later. And
I was going to say, and we even got as niche as to say, when we were interviewing guests, we were actually only interviewing mums. Which has been an interesting journey, I think, because there are a lot of non-mums who follow us, and there are a lot of people who weren't mums before they met us, but then who have become mums now. Does that make sense? So I think it's interesting that we chose that niche, because it's quite niche, and we are alienating. Well, I don't know if we're alienating, but we're, I don't know. If you're a non-mum and you're listening to us, that's amazing. And obviously I encourage everyone that I meet into. I didn't even actually say that it's just for mums, to be honest with you, when I tell them about the podcast. I'm like, just listen to us. It's Mums in Biz. You'll see my face. Just click, click subscribe. But I also do think in a way it's quite good how we've niched down as well, because there are people who are non-mums who I would like to interview, but I can't because they're not mums yet. Does that make sense?
Same here. And I mean, we get asked a lot by people who are not mums yet. Yeah. Even men. We got requests from men that they want to be interviewed by us. And the thing is, we say no, and then I often feel a bit bad. But on the other hand, I still believe, and sorry if I'm offending everybody, but if you are a mom and running a business, there is a difference. You have a lot less time. Yeah. It is between school pickups and drop-offs, and you do stuff at times and in situations like at the side of the tennis court or whatever, watching your kids, you're working. I think there's a difference. And I think you can relate more when we're interviewing somebody who's also a mom and has the same struggles. Yeah.
And I think that's where the pain point came for us when we were developing the podcast and obviously the events, more the podcast, I would think, because the pain point was trying to access information in a quick and easy way that would support us start and grow our business. That was basically what it was at the beginning. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're looking at starting a podcast, look at the pain point of where you're at the moment or where you're helping your clients at. And then that, I think, will generate some ideas of where you want to go with topics and guests that you want to interview, because we wanted to interview, mums who had built businesses, very successful businesses, social media content businesses, because in a way, I think we've said this before on the podcast, that in a way we were doing it in a selfish act, as I like to say, because we wanted to learn. We wanted to learn more about social media, about marketing, about, how to, do a business plan, how to grow business, however you want to say it. And I think that's what generates. So if you are looking at a podcast, I'd be looking at the pain points for yourself and then also of maybe your clients or whoever you're working with.
It also depends whether the podcast is about like supporting your business or the same area of your business, because then it's easy. If you have clients or customers, what their pain points are. You have loads of topics to start with. Yeah. And then people ask me, will I ever run out of ideas to talk about and topics to talk about? And no, you won't, because you will get feedback. People will ask you questions. You can ask your listeners, what would you like to hear? And also you are developing. I think this podcast is developing with us, or going back and forth with us, as we are developing our businesses, we have new questions. As we are starting new things, we have new questions. I mean, writing a book suddenly I interviewed an author because I was so interested in it. Yes. So, it is very personal. And that's the plus, that's, I think what is really great about podcasting is it is personal, definitely. But it doesn't have to be super personal. Because you're often it's about interviewing, or it's about specialist topic. It's about knowledge, sharing knowledge.
Yeah.
But I think you need to have some sort of idea how long the podcast episode is going to be every time. So we have this alternating. In the beginning, they were always between 45 minutes to an hour, bi-weekly. Then we increased to having it weekly, but 1 week is long, 1 week is short. Mm-hmm. So some sort of rhythm that people expect. And also, again, that means who's your podcast for? So if it's always 10 minutes, it's something that people can listen in the mornings in the bathroom while getting ready. Yeah. If it's or while putting the makeup on us. If it's always like half an hour, it's great for when you're going for a run. Or if it's like, there used to be the saying in Germany that the perfect podcast length is an inner German flight. Which is about 45 minutes. Okay. Yeah, because you're listening it on a plane.
On a plane.
Yes. So I heard that in the beginning. So think about that as well. And I think then, once you have all of that, you need to start thinking about your graphics, like your not the logo, I would say per se, but the image that is going to be out there for your podcast on iTunes or any other publishing platform. And obviously you need a name for that one. So pick a name.
And a photo. It's usually best. I haven't seen any podcasts who don't have the photo of the actual host of the podcast, unless it's not massive. Massive. I think there's a couple on here, like I think even Guy Raz, maybe, like Abraham Hicks doesn't have a picture of herself. Like there's a few, but they're actually really big companies, right? And already well known. So I think like having that interaction with your face is key as well, and popping a picture of yourself and then your name on there. And I don't think it has to be perfect either. I mean, we've been naughty. We haven't updated ours in 2 years because we're not in the same country, and we're looking at updating it, but we're also looking at how we're going to do that, being in 2 separate areas. But I think if we got hung up on that, or hung up on colors, or hung up on certain things, I think that's where you can procrastinate and just not start. So I think even just going very simple, I think even starting simple photo, it looks elegant and nice, or however you want to do it, and pop it up there and look at recording your first podcast, I think is the key.
The only thing I could add to that is like use some colors that pop.
Yes.
If you're using any sort of color, I think it doesn't really matter what colors. It does, of course. There's all color psychology, and of course it does matter. But still, more importantly is that people like always pastel colors and so on. But if I think of myself, when I scroll through any sort of podcast graphics, the ones that pop into your eye are the ones that stick out a bit. Yeah. Big shouting. I mean, it's marketing. So, yeah. you can do that yourself, or you hire somebody on Fiverr or Upwork, or, like it doesn't have to be anything. Yeah. Expensive. Amazing. Yeah. The podcast, to start a podcast is not expensive, to say that in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you obviously need some sort of recording device. So either you need some space on your computer. I have recorded before, and then there was
started different, remember, to how we're doing it now. We started we started with that program.
Audacity, but it still was space.
Yeah,
you still need space on your computer, because I remember I recorded once, and then there was not enough space. So I recorded on Audacity, and then I couldn't save it.
Yeah.
So the recording works, but I couldn't save it on my computer because there was not enough space on the computer.
Yes.
So obviously it's big files, so make sure you have some free space on your computer.
Yes, and we don't record like that anymore. We don't record on Audacity anymore. No. Should we tell them how we record?
Yeah, so the Audacity is good, I think, when you're starting out, and especially when you want to edit it yourself. So we edited the podcast ourselves.
Well, you did. I did not.
I did. Thank you for your honesty. And I hated it. I'm honest as well. It took so long.
Because I can know who's like, if somebody's listening, and I know if they know me, they'll be like, yeah, Kyla did not do that. She did not edit the podcast. She did not. No, Emilia was editing them, and it was just too much. It was just, it's because I think it's not, I think we're talking about two different things. It's not the cost of it. It was the cost in time that broke us in the end, as far as like, okay, we need to outsource this because this is getting ridiculous. And it's hours and hours of time. So if you can afford to find somebody on, I think they do it on Fiverr, or what's that other website? There's another website out there. We can link them anyway. Upwork. And, if you can afford that, I would look at that straight off, to be honest with you, and then get somebody to edit it for you, because that's the time-consuming bit of the whole thing.
It is.
It's not
if
the
you're
recording,
not a specialist,
it's that.
No.
Yeah.
It's that. Even if you don't edit many of your M's and so on out of. But to be honest, in the beginning, we did have a lot of gaps and M's and made mistakes and so on. So that took more time as well. Now you become more confident, you become more fluent. But then also you interview guests who've never been on a podcast before. So of course they mumble up as well. I mean, it's normal. So they are nervous. And I have to say now, with last year and the pandemic, it's become easier also with guests, because everybody's so used to just talking on Zoom, and becoming a lot more confident there. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's an upside. Exactly.
So I was saying, how do we do it? So we do it recording. Yeah. Are you going to tell them how we do it? Okay.
So we did it on Audacity. We are doing it now on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, or a good tip. So many people are doing it on Zoom, and sometimes you hear gaps, like where the connection breaks or it sort of ruffles in the background. So what we do also, in order to have no breakups, is that we record each our own voices. So we have an app, like an Apple computer, each of us. So we have QuickTimer, and we record our own voices on there. But you can also even record your own voice on your phone. Every phone nowadays has some sort of recording device. So record your own voice on your phone. Or I had guests who recorded their voices on their phones. And then I have the Zoom recording as a backup. Because it works best. And if you have somebody who puts those two voices together into one recording, that's where the specialist comes in. Andre, for us, thank you very much.
Yes.
It's really good. The quality is much better. And as I said, you can even do that on your phone. And if you're doing that, you see here, if you're watching the video, you see that Kyla and I both have headphones in. So, have good quality headphones so that basically you are only recording your own voice. And when Kyla now talks at the same time, my computer is not recording her voice. If that makes sense, because only I'm hearing her voice and nobody else's. So some sort of headphones for us, the very old normal ones work. A lot of people have more professional ones, which is nice. Yeah. Make sure your phone is on silent. I don't know if you heard that right now, but that was a reminder that popped on my phone, and it's never good. Your phone is on silent or lying somewhere, like, on a soft cushion or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
We recorded in the beginning under a blanket.
It was hilarious.
It was hilarious. And I know I have a friend, or we have a friend actually, who still records her episodes. She's alone. She doesn't interview under blankets. And I asked her once, how is your quality so good? What microphone do you have? And she said, I have no special microphone. I have the same as yours, but I'm sitting under a blanket. So there is some truth in it. I do feel, and if you listen to different kind of podcasts, I know now whether they were in a big room or whether they had a studio or what they did. You can hear the difference. We are not perfect in that sense, but I hope it's good enough. But obviously if you have a recording studio, amazing. Otherwise, do some sort of cushioning around you. Yeah.
But we don't do that anymore, I think we get stuck on, I think people get stuck on that as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Having the audio perfect. And I think just start and then just edit as you go along and then just figure out ways that you can make it clearer. I also feel the way that we speak now is also a lot clearer than it was at the beginning, because I think that we may have not mumbled, but it was just a little bit of a duller tone than what we are now. But I think, again, that comes with confidence and just speaking and just speaking truth and just talking about subjects that we like to talk about. So, yeah.
But you hear that the perfectionist on this side of end of the podcast would recommend, yes, a good microphone. And I do think there is a difference. And when I interview people who have better microphones with me, you can hear it. I mean, listen back to our podcast. Kyla, who's more of a just do it kind of person, is like, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
And not just that. I don't think I ever told you. I ordered my Yeti. She has a Yeti microphone. And I ordered it, but we were in the pandemic. And my order got cancelled. And I was like, oh, this is a sign. I'm going back to my...
And I'm like, no, don't get a proper microphone.
This is my Aquarian sign that I stick with. But I do. I actually do want to order one again. But actually, JB Hi-Fi sold out again. That's what I'm saying. People are like doing their own thing in their studios and everything with microphones. But yeah, it does make a difference. But I do think don't get hung up on it. Just start. Just start recording.
Yeah. But by the way, the Blue Yeti that I'm still using is a good microphone to start off with.
And it's a reasonable price. I think it's about $180 or $90 Australian. Yeah. I don't know how much that is in dirhams, but people can work it out.
Yeah. And it's, I got mine from, I can't even remember where. It was difficult to get it here, but now it's easier. They have it here as well in Dubai. And then I have another one next to me, which is it's a Shure. That's even better. I ordered it because I wanted to record my own audiobook. Now a company is doing it, so that's why I haven't unpacked it. It's really bad. And I thought it doesn't matter because I'm using it for I can use it for the podcast and everything. So, anyway, it's good. In the beginning, we also had to, when we interviewed somebody, they came to my place. We didn't do it through Zoom, only when they were in another country. And you can hear it. It's not so good. If you're interviewing somebody who sits next to you, have 2 microphones.
Yes.
Closer to their mouth, because otherwise you could hear the echoing and, one of us being further away from the microphone and so on. So it was not as good. So actually it's better with the pandemic that we interview through Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the microphone. Then obviously the recording. You need to record somewhere on something. And if you want to edit it yourself, do Audacity. And that's really it. I mean, that's what you need. I always recommend that you have a few episodes recorded in advance so you don't stress about it too much. We are good with it sometimes and sometimes not so good. Yeah.
I do think that you should prep for your episodes. We write down notes for our episodes. not long really anymore, to be honest with you. In the beginning, we did have quite long notes because also you can go back and use them as your show notes. So the summary of the actual episode that then you post on our host, which we'll talk about in a minute. But also just so you have some sort of flow there. But I think now we're quite good at just getting away with like the 3 top points or the 5 top points we're talking about, and then embellishing and talking in depth about all those sort of 3 points as well. Apart from if we're interviewing, then we'll have interview questions there for the guests too.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to do. You can prep your emails. You can have like a standard email when you write to people that you would like to interview them.
Mm-hmm.
Or once you have secured an interview already, saying, like a standard email, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. Please send me an image of yours. So for the marketing tools or graphics later on, please send me a quick introduction of yourself. You need that so that you can do the intro of the podcast. And, for us, we always say that we want this to be a natural conversation. So the questions that I'm attaching is always about 8 or 9 questions that we have, are sort of a guideline for both of us so that they could sort of know what's coming and they are prepared. But then don't be surprised if the questions come in a different order or if I have some other additional questions and I ask those. And to be honest, sometimes I talk to people beforehand and sometimes not. Sometimes the questions are enough and then the topic is they are so good anyway. I mean, they are experts in their field, so it shouldn't be a problem talking about any of my questions. But it's always nicer. I know that the people we interview like to have some sort of questions at hand so they know some sort of direction where it's going.
Yes.
And to be honest, when I have been interviewed, I also like that better. I've been interviewed by people where I had no idea what was coming. And even though, yes, I can answer, it is nicer to have at least sort of, if you read 5 minutes beforehand, a few things that they want to talk about and you can prep yourself mentally. Because some people are need to have some mental prep work before they can just talk easy. I mean, some people can't just talk out of the blue about a subject. And then they miss out on things they wanted to say, which is not nice. So I think it's nicer to send. And for you, once you have done it a few times, it's not that much work, actually.
No.
You know what you want to ask that person. And often it's similar questions. So introduce yourself. How, at the end, how can people find you? How have you gotten to where you are now? So those are 3 questions that are standard. Yeah. And they are always different answers. So, yeah.
Yep. No, I love it. No, exactly. I think it gets more natural. Every time we sort of interview somebody, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah.
But they like being prepared. I like being prepared as far as what I'm going to ask the person, because it still is free flowing, even if they have the questions in front of them, because they've thought about it. But I also think that within it, they can then think up, just things that the audience are going to want to hear. Whereas I think on the spot, it's a little bit harder to do that.
Yeah.
So I was just having a look.
And then if you have people, tell people that you're interviewing to not drink in between, no water. We had this, if I lift up my coffee cup now and put it down like this, you will hear it. Yes. So we've had that before, that I offered somebody who was actually sitting next to me some water, and I didn't realize how often they drank. Even when you interview them, you don't realize it. So tell them not to drink for this half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Not to fiddle with their fingers or their pens or paper. You can hear everything, and it's really hard to edit it out. It's possible to an extent, but it's not great.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay. So that's the recording. So I think we finished the recording, the platform, how to record, recommendations for guests.
Okay, then you need some sort of editing, and you can decide whether you want to edit perfectly all M's and so on out, whether you really cut certain sections out, or whether you leave everything in. I think it used to be more perfect, and now the sort of trend overall is that people want the natural, real stuff, real behind the scenes. On the other hand, I don't know about you, Kyla, but when I listen to podcasts and they say all the time, it does annoy me a bit. So
it does, yes.
Just like if the quality is not so good, I stop listening sometimes. Or if it's too long and they're mumbling too much. So yeah. And you need to tell the person who's editing what kind of style you want. How much they should edit out. Yeah. Okay, and then you need a hosting platform.
Yes, we've been through this, haven't we, of who's hosting and what's going on, and we've changed again now. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that hard to find one because they're quite popular. People usually know
so
where to
there
sort of
are
load
like
it
the
up.
big ones, I would say SoundCloud, Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Podbean, Anchor. But there's loads more. Honestly, there's loads more. I mean, if you Google it, there's so many. But the big ones are probably Libsyn and Buzzsprout, I would say.
Yeah.
We started on SoundCloud, or we've been on SoundCloud until now. And we just switched to Libsyn recently. And to be honest, we didn't do any research. We started on SoundCloud because my neighbor told me go to SoundCloud. You know, pay like 11 euros per month and you have the platform and you can host as many episodes on there as you like. And then you do the feed through to iTunes. So you can't host your podcast on iTunes. You have a hosting platform somewhere else and then it feeds it through to iTunes. Then you open an iTunes podcasting account and you link it. And you need to Google, follow the steps on Google. It's not hard. We've done it twice now. It's not hard.
And it's the same with Spotify. We're on Spotify as well.
Exactly. It's the same there.
Yeah.
And then you can, from that hosting platform, so SoundCloud or Libsyn, you get a link that you can embed on your website. So I have our podcast on my website. Kyla still doesn't have a website.
No, but I have to. Yes.
So I just use that code, embed it on there.
No, I just use the iTunes link just in my Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that you can do. You can use the Spotify, iTunes, whatever links you can. Yeah. But if you want to host, if you want to get like the image and so on, then you get the code from Libsyn or SoundCloud or the other platforms and host it on or link it to your website. And that's easy on most platforms. You just need to embed some code. And I mean, depending on what platform you are for your website, depends how difficult or easy that is. But in general, it's quite easy.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Even I had WordPress before and it was easy. When I had my website before and WordPress, it was easy to embed.
Yeah. And then obviously, like we said, we are on iTunes and Spotify, but there's also, for example, Google Play and Stitcher, which we could look into. But Spotify and iTunes are for free. So honestly, that's why we are on them.
Yes.
Because you pay for the hosting, obviously. That is something you do need to pay for the hosting platform. But you could also host it on YouTube if you have it with video. So we record our video on Zoom as well. So we are posting not every episode, but the long ones on YouTube as well. And that's for free again. So you start a YouTube account, do the same thing.
Yep.
But then you're not on iTunes. So that doesn't feed through to iTunes. That's separate. Yeah.
Separate.
Okay. What else? Launching. Yeah?
Launching.
Oh, actually launching every episode. Yeah.
Well, launching every episode, because we went for doing one episode every fortnight to then doing one episode every week, just because we thought the frequency was good, I think, every week. I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot more. It's a bit more work, obviously, because it's every week. But I think there was also the feeling of every 2 weeks is still quite a long time in between each episode. So we were just going to see how it went, doing it each week for a while and then go from there. But launching at the beginning, I think a lot of prep, really, a lot of talking about it, a lot of being on social media, but even now, like the first thing I like, not the first thing I say to people, but if people ask me what I'm doing, like I tell them, that there's a podcast as well. Like it's just one of the first things that I say, because I do think still that word of mouth, especially because I'm not overseas anymore and I'm local, is the way to sort of get it out there as well. And constantly posting on Instagram about it and reposting and getting all those graphics done, is key as well. But even making all those graphics, I think we've done a podcast on this, or maybe we have not, but making podcasts on Canva, on PicMonkey, importing your images there, it's so easy now that you can go in and do it. We use Wave, so Wave with 2vs.co, to create, the images where you can, overlay your voice over the top. So you can have like a, 60-second snippet of your episode and maybe pick a really great little section of your episode and put it on there, and that can go on your social media. It can go on, every platform, to be honest with you, because it's an MP4. So, just things like that. But I think it is the prepping, and I think it is the organization that's the key, because there is still a bit of work in there. But
and the question is with... Sorry?
I think if you're used to doing it, if you're used to posting on Instagram and doing those graphics, I don't think that there's going to be a huge deal, or, It's not going to be a deal breaker doing an extra graphic.
And then it's the question whether you do, podcasting days where you just do like 4 episodes, you interview 4 people and then you do all the graphics and then it's all done, or whether you outsource that. So we have Renette, who's helping us with our podcast, for example. So she is doing the images, and she's doing we give her the titles. She's doing the images for us. She's doing the show notes to an extent. So we give her some notes, or sometimes we write. Sometimes it's easy to write the show notes, because when you do it right away, right after the show, right after the recording, it's easy to write down what the episode was about. But obviously, for her, she finds it easier than I find it. Kyla finds it easier than I find it, for example. So for Kyla, she just writes the show notes like, done. I think about it a bit more. So that's like, maybe you can get help for that as well.
Yes.
And then batching makes sense, even though it's not always possible. We know that from our own experience.
We try and batch the little ones, the little Monday motivational ones that we do. The 15 minutes. We try and batch those. But batching when you can, and definitely launching. You're going to have to step out of your comfort zone and actually talk about your podcast, because if it's a little bit daunting for you and you haven't done, I don't know, speaking events or anything like that before, and you've got this new thing, then it's going to be a little bit daunting to talk about. But I think just talk about it and tell everybody. Just tell everybody.
Yeah, tell everybody.
You're doing it, platform. So you may as well tell everybody.
Go to your personal Facebook page, go to your Instagram page, go to LinkedIn, go everywhere, and just launch it. And that's actually the same for every single episode. And we also went from an episode every second week to an episode every week, because when you do have listeners that like you, they want an episode every week.
They're waiting.
I also want they're waiting, because I also want I go for a run once a week, and I like to listen to podcasts, and I have my favorite shows that I listen to, and then I like to have something new on there. So I think, I think that's about it, right? Maybe we should talk about the monetizing of the podcast quickly.
Yeah, we should. But I was also just going to talk about approaching guests and talking about approaching guests and people who are nervous about doing that. I think that you'll be surprised who says yes. I'm about to rewrite to one more person that I approached. A rewrite to a person who has a super large following, because I think she may have just missed my message on Instagram. I'm going to try her email address instead tonight, because you don't know whether they've seen it or not, and you don't know whether somebody else is managing their Instagram handle. Does that make sense? And maybe hasn't fed through the information. So I would think asking 2 or 3 times, I think is okay. I think any more than that might be a little bit obviously too pushy, and you would think by the 3rd go you would have had a yes or no response. But I also don't think that you should be, because we were quite fearful, and I still am a little bit fearful about approaching those people who have 200, 300,000 followers on Instagram, because you just think that they're going to say no. But I just think just do it. And if they say no, then they say no, and then they're not meant to be on your podcast. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So definitely approach. And especially if you're passionate about a topic that they want to speak about and you've been following them for a while. And you will have people who say yes and who no show and who don't turn up and who never contact you back. And unfortunately, it's like that in business as well. So you just sort of brush it off and move on to the next thing, and don't take it personally at the end of the day. So,
and you know, of course, it's good to have people you interview on the podcast because they will help you with the marketing. If they have an audience, they will share it because obviously they're interested in sharing it as well. It's some new content for them. It's for most people, I would say 90% of the people we have approached, or maybe 85, have said yes. Because it's good for them as well. They get some extra marketing through us, but they also get material to use for themselves and to talk about and and they have some extra exposure, and it's a win-win. We have the extra exposure through their social media, friends, family, anybody, you know?
Yes.
So I like the idea of interviewing people. On the other hand, you have more control when you do a solo show, when you do it yourself. You have more control over your time, over the exact topics, what's being said. If you have a big following already, maybe you don't need other people, other experts on the show. You know, maybe you have enough to share, but that's totally up to you. Okay, lastly, monetizing. So I would say, like everybody asks me that, when do you start making money with a podcast? And honestly, we are not. We are not making money with it either.
No.
We see it as a marketing tool. We have never put the emphasis on it, though. I think we would be able to. We just don't have the time to look like really into that. We have a little bit there, but not much, not enough. And it's about approaching people, and you can have like email templates ready, and you can have like contracts ready afterwards, you know, and templates ready. How, like, if somebody advertises on your podcast, how often you talk about them, what you talk about them, if they talk, you talk, all these kind of things you need to think about. But I think it's something that you don't. Podcasting is a bit of a passion as well, and it shouldn't be too much about me. It's not the main business. It's not going to be your main business. So don't think about that part before actually starting.
Yeah.
That would be my advice. And then there are lots of ways to monetize it. Just be careful. I think some people, in my own personal opinion, some people are overdoing it, where it gets a bit too annoying and doesn't come natural anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, find people. I mean, once your number of listeners grow, people will want to advertise on your podcast. And then if you're finding people that fit to the podcast, that's good.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's fitting the people to the podcast as well. Because there's no point advertising something, say if it's a product and you've never tried it and you don't even love it, you know, I think it's hard. I think it's hard. And I also don't like the advertisements in the middle of the podcast, at the beginning of the podcast, at the end of the podcast. And I think that's where it can get a bit too much as well. But even if there's something, we might start off soon with something just at the beginning of the podcast and see how we go. But again, it's got to align with both of us. And if it's not aligning, then I don't see that we should be sort of moving forward. So, but it is the next step. But I don't know if many people, I think people are mainly selling their own stuff on podcasts rather than endorsing other people's stuff. Does that make sense?
And that's not bad. You know, it is, like I said in the beginning, it's a really good marketing tool.
Yes.
So see it a bit like a book. I'm looking at my own book. So a book, people said to me, you're never going to make any money with a book. And it's probably true. So I would say don't expect too much. Don't expect too much with your podcast either. It's more a marketing tool. It's what kind of money you can make out of it afterwards.
Yes. Yeah. It's the exposure.
It's the exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. And also don't do it if you don't like it.
Yeah.
If it feels like a drain and if it feels like a problem and it feels too heavy, don't do it. And then have breaks. We have breaks. in between, especially in the sort of the holiday times and over Christmas. And that's to recharge us and to re-energize and remotivate ourselves as well, going into a new year or a new phase in the year as well. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, I hope it gives some tips.
Yeah.
I think that's
I hope so too.
Then you don't have to tell anybody anymore. You just have to point to the episode on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. Hopefully this video saves. Let's see what happens. But yes, but no. And I hope it does help, because I think the more people out there, podcasting and doing this sort of thing, obviously the more you're sharing information and knowledge between ourselves. And I think that's very powerful.
One thing we forgot, you need to record an intro as well, an intro and an outro, which we have. And we changed it once, and maybe we should change it again because there are some things missing now on the intro, but it's okay.
Yeah, that is true. That's all right.
So record that, think about that.
It's very funny doing it with two people.
Yeah, and maybe that is something you can outsource. If you maybe not outsource the editing itself or anything else, but the intro, so that is perfect. Yeah. Outsource that, and then find some music, and you can get some, you can buy. We bought our music.
We did. Royalty free. It was royalty free, and I would have to find the link, but I promise we'll put it in the show notes. But it was royalty free because you can't use just any audio on. No, it's actually a very, very good point. You cannot use any audio on iTunes or any platform. It has to be bought, like licensed. So when we purchased it has a license with it that you can use it in certain ways, and obviously we're allowed to use it within a podcast format.
And I think we purchased it from Creative Market.
Was it Creative Market?
I don't know, but they also have a lot of graphics you can buy.
Yes.
I mean, Canva as well. Canva has free graphics for everything, and then paid ones. So you can look on there for your podcast graphics.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Alrighty.
I hope this was valuable.
I hope so.
Thanks for this.
I hope so. I hope everyone wants to start a podcast now. Anyway, we'll catch you next week. See you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.